depending on where the saboteur falls on your chart, will determine if it has to do with your physical body or your spiritual body. So for me, my prostitute archetype is in my spiritual part of the chart. So I know that my physical body is a channel for the divine. Now, if your prostitute is on the physical part of your chart, then you know that it's time for you to start really taking care of your body. Then usually these are like the mediums, right? Your body is still a channel for divinity, but in a different form. So the prostitute basically comes in to show you ways that you sell yourself short. How you sell your body short. How you sell your spirituality short, basically. And it has to do with self-worth. If we're talking about body and empowerment, So the prostitute basically comes in to teach you about self-worth. In what ways do you sell yourself short? And this archetype also teaches you about your values. If you're not aware of your values, if that's something that you haven't really considered, that's what the prostitute archetype is there to do, is to teach you about your values. What are your important values? What is important to you? What are your non-negotiables? Where is your boundary? That is huge for prostitute, knowing what is yours and what is not yours, basically. What the other part of the prostitute is that the archetype teaches you the balance between independence and dependence, right? So it's like the interdependent, finding that middle ground. I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss anything on here. So you can see how these 4 archetypes, the child archetype, the saboteur, the victim, the prostitute, these main ones, they're all geared towards survival. And they're here to help you master your survival. The child archetype is about, from the time you were born all the way to your teens, right? And then when you step into the adults, that's when the saboteur, the prostitute, and the victim really step in to bring in that mastery there. So knowing these archetypes and where they fall on your chart tells you a lot about your healing, your work, your mastery, and also what you're here to do with others. So I wanted to show you guys this. So basically, when you get an archetype chart done, you have this wheel here, and I hope you can see this wheel. You have this wheel here, and it's basically divided into 12, and we call them the houses. And so we kind of intuitively select each of the archetypes and place them in a house. And for example, so the first house, so I don't know if you can see it, so right there, the first house has to do with your ego and your personality, which if you're looking at, before I get there, so the chart, it goes from 1 all the way to 12, right? So 1 all the way to 12. And 1 is basically when you were born, 12 is when you leave this physicality. And so it goes from birth to death, basically. I don't like saying death because it just depends on your definition of what death is. It could be moving to another plane. But it's basically when you first come into the physical, when you first enter this world, and when you leave this world. And each of the houses have a value. So, the first house has to do with your ego and personality, which is usually when it develops. Your second house has to do with your life values. Your third house is about communication and also your connection with your siblings. The fourth house has to do with home. The fifth house is about your creativity, your joy of being, and also children in general, right? Your sixth house has to do with your occupation and health. Seventh is marriage and relationship. This house is very popular because everybody wants to get a reading on that house, right? So 8th house is about other people's resources and inheritance. 9th house is about your spirituality. It's your house of spirituality. The 10th house is the house of your highest potential. The 11th house is about the soul companionships and global community. This is your service to the world. And then the 12 is basically the house of the mystery. It's the house of the unconscious, the dreams, your secrets, It's basically the house that is in the etheric realm. And so you can kind of see, and I kind of just all of that is listed here, and you can see the wheel here. And so once, once you choose all 12 archetypes, then intuitively you place them in the house. And that's all like a very sacred, we do all of this in a sacred space, in a sacred container. It's just not like you randomly put in things. We tune into your being, we do a little meditation, get you aligned, and then you move forward with it. It's an intense process that really you have to drop into your soul level to be able to get this done. And so, yeah. But yeah, so knowing these, when you have these houses and then you place, depending on where the victim is, the child archetype is, where the prostitute is, it tells you where these shadows or light shows up, or these archetypes play a huge role. And so if your victim, for example, is in the 7th house, which is the house of marriage and relationships, guess what? That is where you usually either get victimized the most, or you victimize others also. If it is, let's say, if your prostitute is in the 9th house, which is your house of spirituality, and that is where mine is basically saying that my body is a temple for the divine. That is the purpose of my body. And I am a channel. I am a channel of the divine. And so you can use this, knowing your chart. It kind of tells you your full story, the story of your soul, the origins of your soul. It tells you where you came from, where you're going, what you're here to do, what you're supposed to be working on, who you're supposed to be working with. This chart here holds so much information for you. Usually when I do a chart for people, we have multiple sessions because we kind of break it down. It's basically a download. And when I do this chart with people, which is a channeling, you have to take time to integrate that within your system. What I'm doing is also awakening these archetypes within yourself and opening your eyes so that you can see them and experience them in your life and really work with them, and know that they're not there to punish you, but to rather lift you up and help you master your path in a big way. So that's just a little bit about archetypes. I can go about this all day. Archetypes just fascinate me. They completely fascinate me. So if you have any questions, you can always find me on Facebook, Abigail Mensah-Bonsu. You can find me. I also have a free sacred container. I like to call it my crystal cave. On Facebook, it's called the Moon Goddess Sacred Sanctum. You can always join us. I do, teachings like this on there. I do free readings. I do activations. I do clearance on there. So we'll love for you to join this beautiful community of gods and goddesses and empowered light workers and beings. And in that, it's kind of like the same container that is being created here with Suki. And so, yeah, you're more than welcome to come find me, ask me questions, send me a Facebook Messenger message. I love talking about this, and I would love to hear from you. But thank you guys so much. I love you. I love you. I love you. And enjoy the rest of the summit. Mwah.